In this video, I will introduce you to LifeJournal, a new note-taking application. This app has four main structural features that all work together. Feature 1. Notes are blocks. The first structural feature is that in this app, notes are truly atomic. They are blocks with their own existence. And even though they can contain a lot of content, they are designed to contain a small amount of content. For example, here, I create a note. And then, another note. To really understand what it means for notes to be atomic, you have to distinguish notes from concepts. In a lot of note-taking apps, you can reference concepts. You can also do that in LifeJournal. For example, here, I will make a reference to the concept productivity and the concept of application. But in most note-taking apps, a link to one concept will lead you to the page associated to that concept. Basically the same as in a wiki system like Wikipedia. A link to a concept will lead you to the page of said concept. And what is a page? It is just a big note, which means that in such system, notes and concepts are entangled together. That is, even though one concept can be referenced in many notes, what you will get when you access a concept, its content, it is really just one big specific note, or one file if you prefer, what I previously called the page of the concept. In such system, if you make a reference to a concept, in practice, you make a reference to the associated note, to the page. Again, in this classical paradigm, notes are very similar to wiki pages. They are meant to contain a lot of content, everything that is related to their concept. And this is why, in this way, notes are not atomic. For notes to be atomic, concepts and notes must be separate entities altogether. And this is the second main structural feature of LifeJournal. Feature 2. Notes and nodes are distinct. Nodes are what connect notes. In LifeJournal, the concepts that you can reference and the notes that contain content are distinct. And the concepts that you can reference are called nodes. So for example, previously, I made a reference to the node productivity and to the node application. So, in other words, in LifeJournal, nodes are the personal list of concepts that you can reference in your notes with links, like wiki pages. But unlike wiki pages, where one concept is associated with one single big block of content, that is, a page, in LifeJournal, the nodes themselves are not tied to one single block of content. Actually, nodes are the ties themselves, and they tie every microblock that references them. So, nodes in LifeJournal are the ties between notes, which is why they are named nodes. And so it means that in LifeJournal, notes are not intended to contain everything that is related to one concept. They are intended to contain a limited subset of information, a fragment. And in LifeJournal, the equivalent of a wiki page is built dynamically. It is basically the network of notes that are linked to a specific node. And this is what you get when you click on a node reference in LifeJournal, a bit like a Twitter feed. And this is the third feature of LifeJournal. In LifeJournal, references are not bridges, they are filters. And it works well only because notes are atomic, because they are fragments of content. Feature 3. References are not bridges, they are filters. In most note-taking apps, when you click on a reference, it will lead you to something else, something specific. The reference is pointing to something outside, which is why we can view references like this as bridges. In LifeJournal, a reference is not like a bridge, but more like a special filter. In LifeJournal, if you click on a reference, it will lead you to more of that reference itself. That is, to all other references to the same concept. The reference is not pointing to something other than itself. So basically, in LifeJournal, clicking on a reference is a bit like making a search request and getting all the results that match the reference clicked. And again, it works because notes are atomic. Another way to view it is that in LifeJournal, references and content are entangled together, whereas nodes and content are not. And in most other note-taking apps, it is the complete opposite. In most other note-taking apps, references and content are not entangled together, but nodes and content are. Maybe you think that with LifeJournal design philosophy, things will get pretty messy when you accumulate notes and references. And if there was no other element to create order, you would be right. But don't worry, there is still one very important element we have yet to see. Feature 4. Multiple types of references. The fourth structural feature of LifeJournal, and probably the most powerful, is that nodes, or concepts, can be referenced in multiple ways. In most note software, there is only one way to reference the concepts that you can reference. And that is precisely because in these software, the content of one concept is only really contained in one single note, and a reference is a bridge to that single file. So it doesn't really make sense to be able to reference one concept through multiple ways, if in the end it is going to lead to the same file. So in these software, no matter what you want to reference about a concept, it will be referenced the same way. And it will lead to the same piece of content. And that's a big limitation. Because, for example, sometimes you want to reference something important with respect to a concept, and sometimes you want to reference something which is not important with respect to this same concept. And if there is only one way to reference this concept, then both important and unimportant references to that object will be mixed together. And so, structurally, the reference system will tend towards messiness. But we want the opposite. We want a reference system which structurally tends towards order. And for that, it is, in my opinion, very important at the minimum to be able to distinguish two types of references to the same concepts, what I call strong references and weak references. But really you want more than that, and I'll show you why later. Weak references. Weak references are the equivalent of tags or mentions in social networks. For example, here in this note, I will create a weak reference to the productivity node using the hashtag shortcut. In LifeJournal, this is when you want to create a link between a concept and a note so that you will be able to come across this note when querying with this tag. This type of reference is very common in social networks and exchange or communication platforms. This creates a sort of decentralized mailbox per concept, in the sense that each mention, or each tag, allows access to a list of corresponding notes. That is, notes in which the concept was one of the recipient. The main role of these references is basically to provide anchors for filters. If you want to get everything that relates to a concept, then you should include tags in your search request. But here again, weak references are better understood in contrast to their opposite, that is, what I call strong references. The main role of strong references is to provide content that is relevant to what is referenced. A weak reference to a concept doesn't indicate that the note provides relevant content in regard to this concept. It just indicates that this concept is connected to the note content as a secondary element. If you only want to get the core content that relates to a concept, then you should not include tags in your search request. So typically, in your notes, you can reference a person and have notes that directly concern that person, their story, and so on. There, you need strong references to that person, like this for example. But you can also have notes that mention that person. For example, if they were cited in an article, if they are present in a video, and so on. And there, you need to make weak references to that person, like this. It's not the same thing at all. And you want your note system to let you quickly retrieve the content of strong references without having to sort through the pile of weak references. Because if you have to do some kind of manual sorting to find specific notes, well, subconsciously, it will encourage you to create a lot fewer references to avoid having to do this kind of sorting. So ideally, you don't want strong references and weak references to the same concept being mixed together, because it quickly becomes a mess, and the references are no longer usable because there is too much sorting to do to find particular notes. Whereas, as I will explain to you in a later video, what matters in a note-taking app is not the storing of information, it's the ability to access stored information efficiently. If I click on one of the references to John Doe here, I will access to all notes where John Doe is referenced. But they will be organized by reference types. If I click here, I can access strong references. And if I click here, I access weak references. And of course, you can have more than 2 reference types. In my opinion, 2 types is not enough. But for this theoretical video, it is better to keep things simple. Once again, note-taking apps without reference types is software where references are messy by default. You have to sort through references. There is friction. Whereas in LifeJournal, references are intrinsically sorted and ordered by default. Because as soon as you add a reference, the type of this reference means it is classed. The reference is integrated in a classification system as soon as it is created. And yes, in some software there are tags to make weak references, but often it is very poorly designed and poorly integrated. It is a completely separate system from other references, which means that it is necessary to duplicate the reference concepts and manage two different systems. It's really not ideal, and in any case, it only offers two types of references. Whereas with LifeJournal, you can go well beyond two types of references. And I'll talk to you in more detail later about why it's interesting. For example, you can create a really advanced and practical task management system using reference types. And just to be clear, reference types are entirely customizable. LifeJournal comes with a preset, but you can design your own system tailored to your needs. The guiding principle being, one reference type equals one purpose. For example, thanks to reference types, you can easily replicate the ability to create wiki pages. You just have to have one type of reference dedicated for that role. And in my way of organizing notes, I use the main reference type for that purpose. So for example, here, I would write and access my personal wiki page for the node John Doe. So to sum it up, I'd say the specificity of LifeJournal compared to other note-taking apps that exist is that the note management it offers is more dynamic and decentralized. If you feel like that this note management system might be good for you, don't hesitate to download the app. It is free and available on all the major platforms. But if you are interested, you can also subscribe to get online features such as cloud backup, synchronization between devices, note sharing, real-time online collaboration, and more. We feel it is important to provide subscriptions tailored to the needs of users, so the starting subscription is very affordable at €2 a month, which is around $2. You can learn more about LifeJournal in the link in the video description and in the pinned comment. Thank you for listening.